Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for Captain America Sentinel of Liberty Issue 9. Yeah, nice cover here showing the invaders as they're going to New York to help liberate it from AIM. And this was an interesting one, because you start and you're seeing, okay, we see Cap and his allies doing their plan, splitting off, trying to do everything they do, but it's not all as it seems. And this really has some interesting kind of layouts in this issue, as we even see from the beginning with all the use of circles. And we see that there's this one person talking about the beginning, and it's like, what's kind of going on here? As we have a TV head being like, hey, there's like been 8 days worth of response to this problem. It's been taken over by like a group of mad scientists. Yeah, you kind of want to deal with that. And we've got Mayor Cage being like, we don't believe this is a superhero situation. We're working with the White House and federal negotiators. And we see Hawkeye pretty much being like, which is why Thunderbolt should be involved, thinking that there's a non-violent solution to this. And then we see that, like, Cap was on top of some kind of train, and that they kind of, like, were able to blast in through the shield. And an interesting part is we then see that the groups are split up. We've got Cap and Peggy. We've got Sharon and the Destroyer. We've got Fury and Redacted. So they're split up into different kind of ones. And I really like it as the person's talking about, we get Invader Force 1, secure the Neganite reactor. And Peggy's pretty much commenting how Steve always hits the ground running. And that Steve knows that they're pretty much just like playing for time to try and get to everything. And then talking about how this one time there was like Dugan's night off, and how Dum Dum was not happy to be left behind because of everything that kind of went on that night. He wasn't at his best, he was at a liability. Steve pretty much saying that, like, hey, his shoulder's fine, and Peggy's like, I wasn't talking about your shoulder. And we see that MODOK is popping up in different kind of ones. We go to Invader Force 2, which is trying to destroy the AIM Command and Control Center. Sharon pretty much trying to see how Roger's doing. How he's like, yeah, I'm just happy that my heart's pumping at all. So I do like seeing them kind of split off and seeing the different kind of character interactions. Then they're trying to figure out what they're kind of doing. Him being like, yeah, I might be getting old, but smashing crypto-fascists never does. Going after AIM. And then they see the command center, and he's asking if they got any, like, rocket boots or anything. But she's like, I got this microfilament, and they pretty much are going to use his throwing arm to kind of, like, get over there. So the third force, of course, is Fury and Redacted for prisoner rescue. Let's see. And then the Redacted kind of brings up stuff of, like, where they are. They actually have housed pretty much the prisoners in that kind of bar place, with Redacted being like, oh, I know this place. It's a good place to talk about socialism. And then asking Fury if he wants to talk about socialism. And he's like, that's a disconcerting thing to hear from a robot, Redacted. Am I a robot? I wonder sometimes. It's like, yeah, we don't know fully what's going on with this dude yet. Or dudette. We don't know, man. It's like, alright, I do want to learn more about Redacted at some point. And they're like, alright, we have to deal with this tank. Fury pretty much comes in, shooting out one of the AIM people, telling everybody to stay calm. Mia's like, screw you, jackboots. And someone else is like, Mia, that's Nick Fury. And she's like, I know who he is. And it's like, Fury usually tries to help, but Fury also does do shit that leads to that kind of thing, so it's like, alright. Then he calls her Hot Topic and tells her to stand down. And that he's looking for Dave. And, like, okay. And he says that American Need You is like, around here we just call him Steve. It's just a kind of cool little bit. Then we see that pretty much Steve and Peggy are kind of around the command center, but going for, like, the big kind of hole. And Steve's pretty much telling her, I'm not trying to deflect from trauma or anything like that, because she's thinking that he's using violence to do that. And she pretty much says that he's the man, the only man who can retreat by running forward. I'm expressing myself kinetically. It's healthy. And she's like, I'm here for you. Bucky was my friend as well. And of course, MODOK, we see that like the whoever's talking kind of links up with the MODOK picture. You hear the word was like the last nail in the coffin, and then they pretty much like dive down into the hole for the Neganite reactor. And I love the use of like movement of how things go on, because we then see Sharon and Roger pretty much slam into the command center, and this is a really kind of cool page. It still follows the whole kind of circle bit, and then we still get panels underneath. Very interesting layouts. And it's funny because we get two guys wrapped up and thrown out to pretty much equalize the kind of balance. And that the Destroyer is kind of commenting that Brian would have loved Sharon because she's their exact kind of trouble. And then she's trying to think of ways to kind of like bring this down, and that he was a sidekick called Dynamite, and she pretty much calls that, was like, I didn't know you were an Ant-Man. And he'd been shrunken down by Nazi scientists, but the name was supposed to be a pun on explosives since he had trained to be a sapper in the Royal Marines before his time in tights, and truthfully, he loved it. So, yeah, there's a reason he's called the Destroyer, because he knows how to fucking use explosives and shit. As we then get the panels showing the explosion. Very nicely done. And then we see that the prisoners who've been freed by Fury are commenting like, damn, they brought down the whole drill and everything. And Fury's talking about rally points, trying to evacuate civilians. This one dock worker dude's acting redacted if he's ever thought about dock work, and he's like, I think about a lot of things. Let's see. And of course, like, Amari's like, listen, we're not hiding, we're gonna help. And of course, Nick's like, hey, I applaud it, but Captain America would very much like to know that you're safe and sound. And of course, Mia's like, except he knew that we would find all this stuff. And it's funny, this one who's like, I ain't never listened to Captain America, me and that guy have words, but I know Steve Rogers, and Steve Rogers would want us to save lives. And then they go pretty much to like Madison Square Garden, where AIM's set up and are trying to like help people. It's like, yeah, that's the effect that Steve has on people. And then we pretty much see that they're like, Steve and Peggy are falling down a hole, pretty much calling out the like denial. Is like, she's like, all the others have known you as the Icon, but I know you as Steve Rogers. And that Steve knows that Bucky's fighting his own fight, and that she's saying that he has to let him go. Barnes isn't some wounded boy in need of saving. He's a man who made a choice. An interesting thing is we see the star point in Peggy's eye, so we'll have to see how that kind of works out. And she says that Steve's his enemy now, and that he wants Peggy to tell him word for word. It's like, that's interesting. And then she kind of starts kind of explaining Bucky's kind of thing, that the world is broken, that of all the systems that have been helped to build people, now think of how many lead those same people in the dark. Hit with so much noise you forget to hear. Let's see here. And that the only way people like Bucky can see a way out is through. He joined their conspiracy up in the clouds and thinking they think he's one of them, but we both know that truth about Bucky Barnes, even if the walls collapse around him, he's going to tear out our world's dark, old, rotting heart. And you know what that means, Steve? It means someone down here has to build a new one. So Bucky's whole kind of shtick for this, explaining this in a nice kind of way of seeing all this different kind of action going about as Peggy and Steve are going to the reactor, and the rest of his people are trying to save people at Madison Square Garden, is that Bucky is trying to take down the system from above on the top of the pyramid, and that he would need Steve below to build things back up as a new one. And it's like, okay, that's interesting. It's interesting that Peggy was the one that kind of delivered the lines of what Bucky's whole kind of modus operandi is, his MO is for this. So we'll see how that kind of works out, because you all know the best plans of mice and men often go astray, so we'll see how that kind of works. And then we see things kind of take their kind of turn, as we see that the power uses MODOK as move 25, and we see the outer circle kind of move over Manhattan. And we then get a thing elsewhere before, as MODOK is pretty much being like, yeah, I made this fucking thing. Text this dude that fuck you, MODOK wins. But then it broke, and then something went kind of weird with his fucking head jewel, and then shit goes kind of nuts, and he kind of transforms more into the control kind of thing. It's what the fuck? Saying, hello, old friends, I'm afraid we once again come to the ending, as we see kind of the sparkly points going on their heads. It's what the fuck's going on here? And we see that he starts fucking with their brains, that say that the mice have found the center of the maze, that he left a key under the mat, so slipping back in is as easy as breathing, because I knew that one day they'd ask me to play with you again. The power has eyes on his shiny Neganite reactor. He's down there now, getting what he came for, and you're on pause. And that Steve's saying that he'll find a way out. And Mono's listen, you've already failed this within 4 times now in the span of just a few minutes. And he loves the ending every time. You're also surprised, but I will be honest, I like beginnings too, so what better place to keep playing together? Let's begin again, as we see MODOK pretty much hovering and has kind of tentacle kind of things connected to Steve and the rest of the people that helped him out, like Mia and the rest from his class. So it's okay, this whole thing has pretty much been, it probably happened, but we don't know how many times it's been happening in their head and how long this has been going on, and that Steve and the rest have to break out. So it's okay, the invaders did get into New York, and the outer circle has their base over there. We've got MODOK on the field pretty much keeping our heroes under play. So that's a big thing. And I like the way that it's telegraphed. We see how it's done up to that point, and seeing MODOK commenting and seeing him in the background, and the layouts really just effectively do that. It's really kind of weird, because I like comics, and this has been a very different kind of way to present it and do it, and I like that they're kind of experimenting with it in this series. It's kind of refreshing and kind of changes up how you interact with it and how you kind of see the motion and see the movement and have it in your head while also having it in the page and filling in those parts. And I'm just shit, this is great. It's a different kind of way that I'm not used to, and I love seeing that kind of stuff kind of be experimented with. Now granted, sometimes it gets kind of nutty doo-dah, and you're I don't know what the fuck I'm looking at or what the fuck has happened. But this isn't one of those. This is one where it's alright, let's see where this goes. And Steve, I do have faith in Steve. We'll have to see how him and the rest of the group are able to handle MODOK and get out of it, and how this is going to be. It's a holy shit kind of cliffhanger kind of part. It's damn, MODOK is really kind of fucked up and gummed up the works with what's been going on, and Steve's probably feeling frustrated with everything with this, but that's the whole thing with Steve. He might feel frustration, he might feel anger, he might feel denial of what's been going on with Bucky, but you always have faith in him and trust in him to think through and try and do his best and try and get a way forward. So I can't wait to see where that kind of happens out and what kind of happens next. So those are my opinions on the issue. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.